The last train home. The rain had been falling over New York City for hours. The streets glistened under the yellow streetlights, and people hurried along the sidewalks with umbrellas held tightly above their heads. Cars splashed through puddles, and distant sirens echoed between the tall buildings. Inside Grand Central Terminal, 28-year-old Ethan Carter sat alone on a wooden bench. He looked tired. Not physically tired, but emotionally exhausted. His dark blue suitcase rested beside him. In his hand was a train ticket to Boston. It was the last train of the night. Ethan stared at the departure board without really seeing it. 3 years. 3 years had passed since he had spoken to his father. 3 years since their final argument. 3 years since he had walked out of his childhood home and promised never to return. And yet here he was, waiting for a train home. His phone vibrated. A text message appeared on the screen. It was from his younger sister, Emma. "Please come, Dad keeps asking for you." Ethan closed his eyes. The message hurt more than he wanted to admit. His father had been diagnosed with a serious heart condition only a few weeks earlier. The doctors were unsure how much time he had left. For days, Ethan had ignored Emma's calls, ignored her texts, ignored the guilt. But tonight something changed. Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe it was regret. Or maybe it was the realization that some opportunities never return once they are gone. A voice echoed through the station. "Track 23, final boarding for Boston." Ethan grabbed his suitcase and stood. The train waited in the darkness beyond the platform. Its bright windows glowed against the rain. He took a deep breath and stepped aboard. The journey had begun. The train was nearly empty. Most passengers were asleep or staring silently out the windows. Ethan found a seat near the back. Outside, New York slowly disappeared behind sheets of rain. For a while, he simply watched the city lights fade into darkness. Then an elderly man sat across from him. The stranger looked to be around 70 years old. He wore a brown coat and carried a small leather bag. His silver hair was neatly combed. "Heading home?" the man asked with a smile. Ethan hesitated. "I guess so." The old man nodded. "Those are usually the hardest journeys." Ethan looked up. "What do you mean?" The stranger leaned back. "The journeys where we're not sure whether we're running towards something or away from something." For a moment, Ethan said nothing. Then he laughed softly. "That's surprisingly accurate." The old man smiled. "I've had many years to practice being accurate." The conversation continued. Somehow talking to the stranger felt easy. Natural. The kind of conversation people rarely have with family and friends. Eventually, Ethan found himself explaining everything. The argument, the years of silence, the guilt, the anger, the regret. When he finished, the old man remained quiet. Then he asked one simple question. "If your father died tomorrow, what would hurt more, seeing him tonight or not seeing him tonight?" Ethan immediately knew the answer. Not seeing him. The realization settled heavily inside his chest. The stranger nodded as if he already knew. "Then you have your answer." The train continued north through the darkness. Hours passed. When Ethan finally fell asleep, he dreamed of home. He was 10 years old again. Summer sunlight filled the backyard. His father stood beside him, holding a baseball glove. "Keep your eye on the ball, Ethan." The ball flew through the air. Young Ethan caught it perfectly. His father laughed proudly. "That's my boy." The memory felt painfully real. When Ethan woke, tears filled his eyes. He quickly looked away so nobody would notice. Outside the train window, dawn was beginning to appear. The rain had stopped. The sky glowed with soft shades of orange and pink. And for the first time in years, Ethan allowed himself to remember something important. His father had not always been the angry man from their final argument. He had once been his hero. Boston arrived shortly after sunrise. Emma waited on the platform. The moment she saw him, she ran forward and wrapped her arms around him. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Emma stepped back. "You came." Ethan nodded. "How is he?" Emma's smile faded. "Not good." The drive home felt longer than Ethan remembered. Every street brought back memories. Every corner reminded him of another chapter of his life. Soon they reached the old house. The white paint was slightly faded. The porch looked smaller than he remembered. Everything felt familiar, yet strangely different. Emma opened the front door. The smell of home rushed toward him instantly. For a moment, Ethan couldn't move. Then he stepped inside. His father sat in a chair near the living room window. He looked older, much older. His face was thinner, his shoulders weaker. The strong man Ethan remembered seemed to have disappeared. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. The silence felt enormous. Then his father looked up. Their eyes met. And suddenly, Ethan saw something he never expected. Fear, not anger, not pride. Fear, the fear of a man running out of time. "Ethan." His father's voice cracked. Ethan swallowed hard. "Hi, Dad." The older man's eyes filled with tears. Something inside Ethan broke. 3 years of anger disappeared in an instant. He crossed the room. His father stood slowly. And then they hugged. Neither cared who started crying first. The following days passed quietly. They talked for hours. About life. About mistakes. About memories. About everything they had avoided for years. One evening, Ethan finally asked the question that haunted him. "Why were you always so hard on me?" His father stared out the window. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he sighed. "Because I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "That you'd fail." Ethan frowned. His father continued. "My father never believed in me. I spent my whole life trying to prove myself. When you were born, I wanted you to succeed. But somewhere along the way, I confused love with pressure." The room grew quiet. "I thought if I pushed you harder, life would be easier for you." His father lowered his head. "I was wrong." For years, Ethan had imagined this conversation. Yet hearing those words changed everything. Not because they erased the past, but because they explained it. Sometimes understanding is the beginning of forgiveness. 2 weeks later, Ethan and his father sat together on the back porch. The same porch where they had spent countless summer evenings. The sunset painted the sky orange. Birds drifted across the horizon. His father smiled. "You know something." "What?" "This is exactly where I hoped we'd end up." Ethan laughed. "On a porch?" "No." His father looked at him. "Together." Neither spoke for a while. They simply watched the sunset. Eventually, his father closed his eyes. A peaceful smile remained on his face. The evening breeze moved gently through the trees. And for the first time in many years, there was no anger between them. Only peace. Only family. Only love. Ethan didn't know how much time remained. Maybe months. Maybe weeks. Maybe less. But he understood something important. Life is not measured by how many years we have. It is measured by the moments we choose not to waste. And sometimes the most important journey we ever take is the journey back home. The end. Ethan didn't know it then, but that peaceful evening on the porch would become one of the most important memories of his life. The sun finally disappeared beyond the horizon, leaving behind a sky filled with deep shades of purple and blue. For several minutes, neither Ethan nor his father spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was the kind of silence that only exists between people who no longer need to explain themselves. Eventually, his father opened his eyes and smiled. "You remember that old oak tree?" he asked, pointing toward the far edge of the yard. Ethan looked across the field. The massive tree still stood there. Older, taller, but unmistakably the same. A small laugh escaped him. The tree I almost fell out of when I was 12. His father chuckled. You didn't almost fall. You told Mom I almost fell. I had to make the story interesting. They both laughed. For a moment, Ethan felt 12 years old again. Not 28. Not burdened by regret. Just a boy sitting beside his father on a summer evening. Then his father grew quiet. Ethan. Yeah. When I was your age, I thought I had all the time in the world. Ethan listened carefully. I kept putting things off. Apologies, conversations, dreams. I always thought there would be another chance. The old man stared toward the darkening horizon. Life doesn't always give us another chance. A cold breeze drifted through the yard. For some reason, those words settled heavily inside Ethan's chest, as if they carried more meaning than his father was willing to say aloud. That night, after everyone went to bed, Ethan couldn't sleep. The house felt strangely alive. Every creak of the floorboards reminded him of childhood. Every shadow held a memory. At around midnight, he walked downstairs and entered the kitchen. A single light glowed above the stove. To his surprise, his father was already there, sitting alone at the table. A cup of tea rested in front of him. Neither seemed surprised to see the other. Can't sleep, his father asked. Ethan smiled. Guess it runs in the family. His father nodded toward the chair opposite him. Sit. Ethan sat down. For a few moments, they simply listened to the ticking clock on the wall. Then his father reached into a nearby drawer. He pulled out a small wooden box. The box looked old. Very old. Its corners were worn smooth from years of handling. What is it? Ethan asked. His father slowly placed it on the table. Something I've been meaning to give you. Ethan frowned. His father pushed the box toward him. With careful hands, Ethan opened it. Inside were dozens of photographs. Old family photographs. Pictures from birthdays. Christmas mornings. Summer vacations. School events. Moments frozen in time. Near the bottom of the box, Ethan discovered something unexpected. A stack of letters. All addressed to him. His name appeared on every envelope. His heart skipped a beat. What are these? His father looked away. I wrote them. Ethan stared at him. When? The older man's voice softened. Over the last 3 years. The room suddenly felt smaller. You wrote to me. His father nodded. Every month. Ethan picked up the first envelope. The date on it was only a week after their argument. His hands trembled. Why didn't you send them? A sad smile appeared on his father's face. Because I wasn't sure you'd read them. For several seconds, Ethan couldn't speak. 3 years. 3 years of silence. And all this time, his father had been writing. One letter after another. Words he never mailed. Conversations he never had. Apologies he never delivered. Ethan carefully opened the first envelope. The paper inside had yellowed slightly with age. He began reading. Dear Ethan, today I almost called you. I picked up the phone 3 times. And each time I put it back down. I keep replaying our argument in my head. I keep wishing I could take back those words. If you're reading this someday, I hope you know something. I was angry, but I never stopped loving you. Ethan's vision blurred. A tear landed on the paper. Then another. And another. Across the table, his father remained silent. Giving him space. Giving him time. For years, Ethan had believed he was the only one suffering. The only one carrying regret. The only one missing family. Now he realized something painful. His father had been hurting too. Maybe just as much. Maybe more. Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees. Inside the kitchen, father and son sat together long after midnight. The distance of 3 years slowly disappearing between them. One letter at a time.
One letter at a time, the walls between them continued to crumble. Ethan stayed awake until nearly 3 in the morning. He read 5 letters that night. Each one revealed a different side of his father, a side he had never known. One letter talked about how proud his father had been when Ethan graduated from college. Another described how he secretly attended one of Ethan's presentations in New York but never introduced himself. One letter simply said, "Today was your birthday. I wanted to call. I hope you're happy. I hope you're healthy. I hope life is treating you better than I did." By the time Ethan finished reading, his eyes were red. He carefully placed the letters back into the box. Neither he nor his father said much. Words suddenly felt unnecessary. Sometimes understanding speaks louder than conversation. The following morning, Ethan woke to the smell of pancakes. For a brief moment, he thought he was a teenager again. He walked downstairs and found Emma in the kitchen. She smiled. "Good morning. You made breakfast?" Emma laughed. "No," Dad insisted. Ethan looked toward the stove. His father stood there wearing an old apron, the same ridiculous apron he'd worn for nearly 20 years. The sight made Ethan smile. For the first time in a long time, the house felt alive. Not like a place waiting for bad news, but like a home, a real home. Over breakfast, they talked about everything. Old neighbors, childhood friends, funny family stories. Emma even brought out a photo album. Within minutes, everyone was laughing. Then she stopped on a particular photograph. The picture showed Ethan at 16 years old, standing beside his mother. The room immediately grew quieter. Ethan's smile faded. His mother had passed away 7 years earlier. Cancer. Fast. Unexpected. The loss had changed everything, including his father. For several moments, nobody spoke. Then Ethan quietly asked, "Do you ever think about her?" His father looked at the photograph. Every line on his face softened. Every day, the answer came instantly, as if he had never stopped thinking about her. That afternoon, Ethan went into the attic searching for old belongings. Dust floated through beams of sunlight. Boxes filled every corner. Most contained forgotten decorations and old furniture. Then something caught his attention. A small leather notebook. His mother's handwriting appeared on the cover. Ethan froze. Slowly, he opened it. Inside was a journal. His mother's journal. His heart pounded. He sat down on an old wooden chair and began reading. The entries stretched across several years. Most were ordinary observations about family life, funny stories, vacation plans, daily memories. But one entry stood out. It was dated only 3 months before she passed away. Ethan read carefully. "Today I watched Ethan and his father argue again. They're more alike than either of them realizes. Both stubborn, both proud, both afraid to say what they really feel. One day they'll understand each other. I only hope it happens before it's too late." Ethan stared at the page. A strange chill ran through him. The words felt almost prophetic. He continued reading. Several pages later he found another entry. This one made him stop breathing for a moment. "If anything happens to me, I hope Ethan eventually learns about the lake cabin." The lake cabin? Ethan frowned. He had never heard of any lake cabin. He quickly flipped through more pages, but there was no explanation, only a few scattered references. Nothing more. Confused, he carried the journal downstairs. His father sat in the living room reading. "Dad?" His father looked up. "What is it?" Ethan handed him the journal. The moment he saw it, his expression changed. A mixture of surprise and sadness crossed his face. "Where did you find this?" "In the attic." His father gently touched the cover, as though holding a precious memory. Then Ethan asked the question, "What's the lake cabin?"
The room became silent. Far too silent. His father's eyes lowered. For several seconds, he didn't answer. Then he slowly closed the journal. I was hoping that subject would stay buried. Ethan exchanged a glance with Emma. "What subject?" His father took a deep breath, and for the first time since Ethan returned home, genuine concern appeared on his face. The cabin belonged to your grandfather. Ethan frowned. The grandfather you always talked about. His father nodded. The same one. Then why have I never heard about it? His father stared out the window. Because after what happened there, nobody in the family wanted to talk about it anymore. A cold feeling settled over the room. Emma leaned forward. What happened there? The old man remained silent, long enough that both Ethan and Emma thought he might refuse to answer. Finally, he spoke. 32 years ago, someone disappeared. The room froze. Ethan blinked. What do you mean disappeared? His father's voice dropped almost to a whisper. I mean they were never found. Outside, dark clouds slowly gathered over the afternoon sky. And for the first time since returning home, Ethan felt that his journey wasn't ending. It was only beginning. Because hidden somewhere in the past was a family secret nobody had talked about for more than 3 decades.